Hi,
Hi everyone.
everybody who is watching or who is listening. Welcome to the next episode of the Pangeans,
Mhm.
a podcast brought to you by the queer feminist NGO Pangia, together with Shella Radio. Hi, everyone. So,
Hey.
my name is Lana, and I'm your today's host, and I'm being joined today by the one and only Helena.
Hey everyone.
How are you doing, Helena?
I'm good. I'm a little bit warm and a bit hungover, but we are getting through it. We are getting through it.
Yes, honestly, I have to say something about the weather. It's killing me right now. Like, I'm sweating too
I'm
much.
sort of loving it, but I kind of also find it quite like it's been intense. It's been
What
a
I
stressful hour.
what I hate the most is that this is exactly what I was asking for like 2 months
Yes.
ago, and now I'm
Yes.
miserable. So it's like it's a never-ending
Mhm.
cycle, you know.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
always, you always need to complain about the weather. At
I
least
love
I
a
do.
complaint. So,
So yeah, but enough with that, enough with complaining.
yes.
So let's move on to our today's topic. But actually, shortly before that, let's have some Panjay events shout outed.
Nice. Yes. Yeah.
So during summer, usually there is not much because Pangea a lot of times takes a little break from the regular events. However, there are still some exciting
Mhm.
news. First of all, we still are collecting books for the Pangea Library. So
Yes.
please feel free if you have any books at home that you would like to donate, and the books about so the educational books, something about feminism, something about um,
Can be
maybe
about queer rights, intersectionality,
exactly.
anything that you think other people in Prague would benefit from reading or kind of knowing about. So we'd be really happy to take any of those in.
Yes, exactly. And then later, when we have enough donations piled up, we will be having some Pangaea recommends shelves in different spots in Prague. Usually, it will be a cafe or maybe something like that, or
Yeah.
maybe a little library or something like that. And you will be able to go there and grab a book and read it. And yeah.
Yeah. It would be exciting.
What else are we having this Wednesday? Please join us for the another edition of Queer Bazaar. So this time the Queer Bazaar will be hosted in Campus Hybernska starting from 5 p.m. There will be some of the vendors that are by now the regulars and the usuals who sell their crafts, and there will be also some new ones. There will be a pop-up tattoo artist, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I believe
It's
there
always
also
such a nice event. It's super good. Really recommend.
yes. Very chill, a lot
Mhm.
of stuff to look at, a lot of stuff to spend your money on, you know. So please join and have some fun with us. Besides that, I believe that.
So we will have things in the run up to Pride. Pride here in Prague is at the end of July. So we will have some events that week. We don't know exactly what days they will be yet, but if you keep an eye on our Instagram page, everything is posted there, so you'll be able to know. And it will be a mix of kind of more social things. We might have another queer bazaar. We might have an education session. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff coming up.
Yes. But shh, don't tell anybody yet.
Yes, yeah.
Those are plans in the
Yeah.
making. Those are
To
plans
be
in
confirmed.
to be exactly to be defined very soon. So yeah, all right. I think now we can move on
Yeah.
to our today's topic, which is education. Just couple of words before we jump right into it. So Helena is actually an education coordinator in Prague,
Yeah.
and also is a full-time teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. So I teach literature, I teach English, but I run the education side of Pangea. So we have fortnightly education sessions, and I'll be kind of talking about the work we do that there, and then we kind of are thinking about how we can develop education and like what Pangea can offer in terms of education to a more broad thing. So I'm going to kind of combine those two topics together in what I'm going to be talking about, but really focusing on like queer education.
Fab, I love this. Okay, so would you feel comfortable to talk a little bit about yourself now
Yeah, that's fine.
and give us a little timeline?
Mhm.
Where are you from?
Mhm.
What is your background? How did you get to Prague, to Pangaea, and what and why education is your passion.
Yeah, so I'm originally from London. I moved to Prague in January, and I've always worked as a teacher, so it's the only job I've ever had. And I kind of have, over the years, been as interested in thinking about education in a conceptual way and like how we can support young people outside of the classroom as much as thinking about just being a classroom teacher. And I moved to Prague because I got offered a job here at a school here. So it was kind of it was a fun move. But I still do a lot of work thinking about that. And at the school I work at now, I help to run the GSA, which is like a gay straight alliance, which is for kind of young people who are, it's open to anyone, but it's particularly kind of for young people who are questioning kind of their gender and sexuality, and it's like a safe space for them. I think that I also come from, when I was at school, there was no education around like being queer in any way. There was no sex ed around this, and it was really like not a discussion point. Like no one talked about it at school. It was like a dirty secret. And so I have so many friends who have grown up in environments like that, and it has been one of the, it can really affect people's mental health, physical health, and just kind of quality of life. And so I think when I knew that I wanted to be a teacher, it was something that was really important to me, was to be able to have that. And the last job that I worked in the UK, there wasn't really the capacity to do that in the same way because it was a religious school. And so, I mean, I could get into a whole thing about that. But,
I believe that.
But the now that I work at a school where there is kind of an openness and acceptability to it, it's something that I really enjoy being able to kind of talk about a little bit more. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Now, you have mentioned that when you were growing up, and I completely can relate to that. Growing up, there was not really much information out there, and if it was very, like, it wasn't very, how to say, you couldn't access it so easily, and when you did, it was quite limited, you know? So my question for you is, do you feel like comparing how it is today and back then, because I don't know exactly also when the back then is. I never asked you.
We're not going to reveal
but it's okay. it can be
50 years ago.
50 years ago. Damn girl,
really
okay.
good skincare.
Drink that water. Can I have some? Because I need to look like that when I'm 50. So, do you feel like there has been a big progress in the queer education and sex education in general, or maybe in UK because this is where you were growing up?
Yes and no. I think that I think with like sex education there has been improvement. In the UK, actually legally now schools have to talk about a wide range of different forms of relationships, and so there is kind of more queer sex education. But also, and there is like, there's more information out there for young people. I think that social media is such a kind of important tool for young people to find out information about their identity in all kind of different capacities. But I feel like right now, kind of mirroring what's going on in the world as a whole, we're getting this kind of, there's definitely an increase in the rise of kind of these like toxic masculine views, and things like that. Students are kind of talking now about feeling maybe less confident in coming out than a couple of years ago. So I think that like things are not perfect, and there's always progression to be made. I think that you kind of, even when progress is made, and that is great, you have to be like really active and kind of think about challenging conceptions. What can we do further? And in terms of actually within the Czech Republic, they did this big survey of kind of what they were asking LGBT people of a variety of different ages, what would you like that would improve your life significantly? And actually, the thing that was the highest ratio was having more conversations in schools around sex
Yeah.
education. So it is kind of a nationwide thing, and it is something that, yeah, I don't know if I really answered that question, but
Yeah, I think you did. Like, if I would judge from like my personal experience of like how I used to get information and how I used to work with it, I feel like what I learned, especially about like queerness and also about sex as well, after I finished school is like, I don't know, maybe 95% of things that I
yeah,
knew
yeah,
during the school years and when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, when I was like a younger adult. And it's amazing that now we have more opportunities to get this education, to get educated on certain topics. However, I feel like the problem is that a lot of times you have to make this decision. Okay, I somehow learned about this topic, that it exists. I took the interest in it, and I'm now making like active steps towards doing the learning. And I could not see myself doing that when I was growing up.
yeah,
And I feel like maybe if it was like offered to me in the sense of like, hey, there is this topic, maybe you'd never heard about it,
Yeah.
maybe you should, then I would learn about stuff way earlier and maybe had, you know, just better, I don't know, maybe even like better life, better understanding, better experiences. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think that a lot of people see the support that we give to young people as like, especially with stuff like queerness, as we're just supporting like students who are out or questioning. But actually, I think that there's a real role that is played of like educating everyone, because this idea that you've decided age 15 or 16 who you are for the rest of your life is
Ridiculous.
And so instead, kind of, I think, and actually then like education creates empathy. So this is a huge thing, and kind of we'll talk about this a bit with Pangeans as well, of like education is a form of teaching empathy to people regardless of age, regardless of background. And so these oh, sorry. So the oh, I completely no, it's fine.
Wow, moment ruined.
Moment ruined.
Education,
Anyway, education
is a way to
provides
teach empathy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to keep on talking about schools, or do you want to talk more about Pangea and education?
It's honestly, it's up to you, but I really like this topic, and maybe I would stay in it for just a little bit longer. I just remembered that, like maybe a couple months ago, I was having a road trip with my friends, and it was like a 7-hour ride. And at certain point, we were just like done with putting on music, and we put on some podcasts in Czech. And it was my friend who was driving and who put the podcast. And it was, I don't even remember what was the name or who was talking, but I remember the topic. And it was about education, and it was about some sort of like some summer camps for like young adults or for like children even. For teenagers, where they were taught how to be men and women in the sense of like the etiquette and all of this type of stuff. And it was a very short episode of the podcast, but the woman who was talking about it, she was like, she had like this opinion that on one hand it's like really nice because they were talking about sex, about for example protection, about STIs, and about all of these things that we should talk about more, especially with young adults, because they are also the target audience for this. And it's better for them to learn these things sooner than later. However, there were also a lot of like agenda on like gendered things, like you as a girl should do this, behave like this
Yes.
and blah blah blah, and you as a boy should, like, I don't know, open doors for girls, or like, you know, blah blah blah, behave this way, or, you know. And hearing that in 2025 to me was so bizarre, because I remember when I was like, I don't know, 6 or 7, it was like before preschool age. We have had this book in my household that was exactly about this, minus STIs though.
Yeah.
That was not there, but all these like etiquette bullshit things.
Yes.
And gender divisions and all of that was there. And for me, it was a little bit of a shock that it's still perpetuated to children like that. You know what I mean? So my point is, I feel like it doesn't matter. Maybe like, okay, it does matter how many educational opportunities there are created for people, but it really is crucial to make it systematic.
Yes.
And to make it kind of like compulsory for people to learn about things, you know, in earlier age. You know what I mean?
And I think I wouldn't say that this is like my area that I know as much about, to be honest, is like the legalities around teaching sex ed and things here. But I do think that it is difficult when like people can opt out or opt in, because you then have self-selecting groups.
Exactly.
And anything where it's like, it's education where you have chosen to be there, then it's generally people who are going to agree with you. And I think that's really difficult, like thinking about different forms of education, how to speak to people who don't agree with that and why that's still important. And actually, this is something that we talk about a little bit in Pangea with our education sessions, is like how it can really easily end up with you talking about things with everyone agreeing. So like we actually had a session a couple of weeks ago, which some of our lovely people from Pangea hosted, about Palestine. And actually afterwards, we had a discussion and people had quite a lot of different views, but actually being able to facilitate that was an important part of the education session, is that actually it was good having
a conversation
about it. Whereas you can end up with like education things of everyone there just agreeing automatically with it. And that's good, like that's still educating people, but actually they're not always the people who need the education. And this leads on to last week. I did an education session with my friend Claudia, where we were talking about like limitations on queer rights in Central Europe right now. And actually I started by talking about it as what that means in terms of education for educating other expats. Because Pangea, a lot of people, because it's English speaking, are expats moving here. A lot of people don't have knowledge about current kind of cultural events that are happening in your country, because there's the language barrier, there's just maybe other things that are of interest. And so I think that like part of Pangea's work can also be to like educate ourselves continuously within it. And I'm kind of going to return back to this, like these 5 stages of allyship, which I talked about a little bit on Tuesday, and kind of how these therefore can link to this form of education. So stage 1 is awareness, so recognizing inequalities. Stage 2 is education, so learning about the issues. Stage 3 is self-examination, so acknowledging your own biases. Stage 4, empathy and understanding, so listening to people's experiences. And stage 5 is taking action, so moving from awareness to change. So actually, education is one of the first things in it.
Yeah, learning about what's going on, what's the state. Yeah,
and you can definitely teach some empathy and understanding to people as well. But actually, education is like the first thing. And then they kind of go out and you have to learn from it, and you have to change what you're doing from it.
I completely agree. So within Pangea, this is exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And this is so. Yeah, we run these fortnightly education sessions. They're on a real variety of different topics, so people can choose to speak on what they are interested in. And we've had like a real mixture of different ones. So we've had ones recently on, someone did one on like female pleasure. We had one on learn, like kind of knowing your rights if you go to a protest. We had one on lesbian history. We've had one on Syria. So they seem quite kind of broad, but they're all kind of linked back to our like core values of Pangea being like a queer feminist NGO, which is intersectional in its approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like all those topics reflect on Pangea's agenda and what we actually are trying to, what message we're trying to send to the outer world. And how was it for you? So you joined Pangea and started with the educational sessions quite recently.
Yes.
And tell me, how is it for you? Do you see a lot of interest in young people who join these sessions? Do you feel like it's an important thing to do in Prague? And do you think that it's actually working?
I think that it's a hard question to ask about those things because we get different people every time we have them. So there will be like core people who come every time, and then there's new people who come. It's usually between like 15 to 20 people come to each session. And so you'll choose to come because you think it's something of interest to you. And people are generally really responsive. But I think that like what I was saying about like that, because people choose to come, you're coming to something that you're interested in. And so you probably already have probably shared values with what the lecture's being on. I think what we're now thinking about in Pangea a bit is like, how can we
break the bubble
and bring education into a bit more of a kind of thinking about the outside of just like the Pangea bubble. But that's super hard. It's really hard to do without like losing our values as well. It's hard when there is a language barrier. And even though a lot of people in Prague speak English, if you're thinking about things like going into schools or working with young people, that's where the language barrier is. Yeah.
Exactly.
So because I work at a school that is fully taught in English, I don't have that, but I realized that I probably wouldn't be able to do that much in terms of thinking about education outside the school.
It's true that it is one of the big like problems and underwater stones of the NGOs that are operating in a language that is not the same one as the national language or the one that frequently used or is used in schools. Because there I was also like sitting right now and thinking like, yeah, like Pangea could go to like, I don't know, do some educational sessions at schools or maybe participate in some panel talks where people that are more like on a national level rather than an international one. However, for this, you actually need people who are Czech or who at least speak Czech. Yeah. That is a bit. Well, I do. Yeah, that's true. I do speak Czech.
You volunteered
a little bit. Did I? On camera. Amazing. Now I cannot gaslight anybody about this. Period. Okay, back to topic.
I feel like we're just like actually organized. We're having like our meeting just at this.
Oh, is this an intervention for me from Pangea? Helena.
Yeah.
You did me dirty.
I had a motive.
You did me dirty right now. Wow.
But yeah, for sure. I mean, at the moment we're taking a little bit of an education break over the summer because a lot of people in Pangea are students. So they're going like on holiday or to see their families. But from September, actually one thing that I would love to do is like do an education session for teenagers. I think that would be really nice. So have a specific one.
I like that. Yeah, okay.
For young people.
Do you have any specific topics in mind that you would like to raise?
I think something about like what, maybe like just an introduction to like what are some other things that are going on in Prague that you can get involved in, because it's returning back to that thing about visibility. in that for young people who are questioning their identity in any way, seeing someone who is visibly out in a community can make such a difference to you.
Absolutely,
and I think that, like, in terms of that, it might be something like a teacher, but it also could be like if you went to like the queer bazaar. I think if I was like 16 and had gone to the queer bazaar, it would have been like incredible.
That would be a life-changing experience for
it
me.
It would be one of those things where I was like, there's so many people who are so open, and I, just like kind of knowing that things like that happen. But I actually think that whilst for a lot of teenagers, they might just not realize that these things are going on because it's just outside of it. Yeah. So that's great. I mean, actually, when I went to there was a really good talk which Yusuf actually did at Svetova on Palestine a couple of weeks ago, and I was chatting to this woman, and she was like, "This is actually my first event like this." And she was 17, and I was like, that's actually so impressive to come to something like this alone, age 17, and get involved. And she was like, it's because I want to be educating myself. And I was like, yeah, that's super impressive, but I think a lot of young people wouldn't do that. Go on to something like that on their own.
I wouldn't do that when I was 17. Like, I'll be honest with you.
Oh no, neither. So
I always admire younger people who like put themselves out there in this way, and really like they want to know, and they want to be there, and they want to be aware. It's amazing because I feel like this is what lacks. This is what and this is maybe something that could be. Those are the values that could be pushed through this, through those fucking rigid school systems,
and
that do something.
And I think also it comes back to like support and allyship, and with Pangea right now, with like the world in the state that it is, it can feel really difficult as a collective to feel like, what can we do to challenge it when there are so many issues that we can't really impact, both within the Czech Republic but then also within the world. I mean, as much as Pangea is great, we are not gonna like stop
probably
war
not
just yet, but like allyship can be supporting one person, and that makes, if they're making their life better in some ways, that's still a really important part of allyship.
Of course it is. I mean, when it comes to any sort of or like any organization or any group of people who have like some sort of idea that they want to pursue, it doesn't have to be like, let's stop the famine. I mean, it would be lovely, but think globally, act locally. Still works. It still applies.
Yes, that I really like that, the whole idea of think globally, act locally. And yeah, I think, and also like think about where your skills lie. Like, I said that I would help out with Pangea's education side because like I have a background in education, so that's something that I can use those skills for good. Like, you don't have to go and do something that's completely different to your day-to-day life. If you have specific skills in some area, use those skills to support your community. Not like, it's not actually better to be, say, like, I don't know, there isn't that like certain things are better than other things. Just find like a skill that you can offer.
Yeah, but also it doesn't have to be what's bad or what's worse. It's like,
like
if you can do something, if you know how to talk, then you can use that. If you know how to write, if you know, or even just like being somewhere, and be present. Also, sometimes it is enough.
And I like this with Pangea, that the way that Pangea works is that there are coordinators for different things.
That's true.
And it's nice because actually it's where people's skills lie. Like, I'm terrible at social media. I'm not going to be like, it's because I'm 50.
All right.
Yeah.
Right.
So like, I'm realistically not going to offer Pangea any support in that area.
Yeah.
But I can talk about topics. and I can also like help people organize their thoughts maybe into like a presentation or something like that. So use that skill.
Oh, honestly, I was same story,
Mm-hmm.
because I wouldn't be offering anything in the social media field, but I know how to organize events.
Yeah,
I know how
yeah.
to like do that. I know how to what to put your attention to and what
Mm-hmm.
the underwater stones is, and this is what I'm bringing to the table.
Because how long have you done stuff with Pangea for?
Same as you.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, we came together.
Oh, I would think that you're
Sister.
like so little old school.
Oh no, honey.
Yeah.
I act like
but
I
it's also
am,
like I'm pretending that you speak fluent Czech. So
which I do.
you do.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
So.
There you go. Yes.
So
You just
yeah.
didn't want to. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to say about like Pangea's current state, or maybe there is something that maybe there are some ideas that you want to pursue September and
So
later besides
yes.
trying to involve more underage people? Oh, how you say it correctly? Youth?
You.
Youth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
youth.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, this is like a nice opportunity to, if we, in terms of our education sessions, it is a place for people to talk on things that they are passionate about and they're interested. And actually, we would love to have a more diverse range of speakers. Like I did a presentation on the Czech Republic this week, but actually, like, I'm not Czech. Am I necessarily the best person to do that presentation? No. But I thought that it was something that a lot of people in the collective kind of maybe wanted to know a little bit more about. And so I made it kind of relevant to expats. But then if we're thinking about things like, yeah, we want to have more kind of people of color, more people who have things that they are is really important to them and that they don't get a platform in Prague to do in any other way. So that's what we would kind of want from this. So if anyone is interested, please come and
please sign up.
yeah, send us a message on Pangea and we would love to have you from September.
Yeah, because indeed the range of topics is very, very broad.
Yeah.
And if there is something that you feel like you have at least some sort of expertise, if there is something that you would like to say, or if there is a topic that from what I understand, it can be also like a discussion.
Yeah, so
right?
What we usually do is that it's usually like it's a 2-hour session where the first hour is usually a presentation, and then the second hour there's usually like a few discussion questions that we might lead around. But it doesn't have to be that way. We've had ones where it's been like pure discussion the whole time. We were thinking about ones where maybe everyone does like some pre-reading. So like if we all read an article on something and then have a discussion from that. Or so we're open to trying out different things. I mean, Pangea right now it's something that is constantly evolving. So we use it to support our community in different ways. So if the community would benefit from something, ultimately that's what we want our education sessions to do.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let me look into the notes and see whether there is something that we might have missed. Oh, actually, I wanted to ask a little bit more about this GSA club that you are running.
Yeah.
Tell us more about it.
I don't run it on my own. So another member of staff has run it for many years. So I really don't want to say that I run it. I just have started supporting out with it. And well, it's something that I didn't have. There wasn't one in my old job. There wasn't one in the school. So it's lovely that there is one now. It's facing some challenges because of like we're moving buildings at the moment at work. So in terms of students who are younger are kind of more reluctant to join because they don't really know where it is and things. But actually, these type of things are a lovely space for different generations of teenagers to be able to like talk to each other about things. Because if you've got a 19 or 18-year-old who's very comfortable and very open in their identity in some ways, that might be an incredible support for like a 13-year-old who's just starting to like question everything about them in a way that sometimes a teacher can't, because there is like young people might just feel more comfortable having those discussions with
So
each
the
other.
school that where you're teaching, they're like this range of ages from
so
like
it's from 12 to 19.
Oh, that's lovely. Okay.
Yeah.
And teachers also participate actively in this.
No, it's just for students.
Just
so
for
it's
students.
just for students, and it's just a space for them to meet. It's very informal, but I think that it's like Pangea, like anything where you have a space for people to join is kind of really important, because I still think that physical spaces make a big difference in terms of community. Like yes, online ones is great, but being able to visibly see other people and meet every week and discuss things is nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
Yeah.
It is really nice indeed. Okay. And so this GSA thing, do you happen to know whether this is something that is like applied in like broadly? Like, have you heard of similar type of?
So it's really I think it really depends on different schools. A lot of schools, so I have a friend who works in the UK who runs one at her school, and
sorry, little note in Czech Republic.
No, but sorry, I'm gonna then go on to the Czech Republic.
Okay.
So I know that but that was because a student asked her to set it up. Here, all of these things are totally informally done. Like, it really depends if a student wants to set these things up. It is not something where it's like legally required by
it is. We know it's not.
Yeah. So again, a lot of these things come from one student maybe having an idea and doing it. There's no formalized system.
I remember because I was studying here in Czech Republic. I was studying in the university, which is like something different than the school that you are teaching. But still, I remember I started like in 2015, 15, around that time. And I remember that but even back then already there was like some sort of a student collective for gay people, for queer people. I think it was like mostly for gay people, especially at that time. The word queer wasn't really sounding that often. And I remember I went a couple of times, but I didn't really like it because I remember feeling like it was a little bit. And I didn't know that at the time. I couldn't like name it, but now I can. And I feel like it was quite masky, quite, homonormative kind of thing. There were mostly gay guys who are identifying as gay guys, as like men. And I was like, yeah, it's lovely to have it. And at first I was like, it's nice to like be around people who like understand you to somewhat. But still, I didn't feel like that was it. And that's why I'm asking you whether it's like something that is happening more often now, even at educational establishments for younger people, not necessarily universities, or not. Because it sounds very like something that I could definitely use.
I think that it's totally. I think it was the same like when I left school. Like when I went to university, there was like an LGBT club, but it was very LGB. Like it was like realistically, it wasn't discussing gender questioning or kind of trans people. It was very much, and it was more of a party thing than anything else. Today, I think that like we have more questions about like this like intersectional gender sexuality is kind of more discussed in society, and I think that is also seen with young people. But I think that a lot of groups, like I wonder if now that group will be much more the one that you're saying at
Yeah, I
university.
wonder, first of all, whether they still are a thing, or maybe they transformed into something
Yeah.
else. I would also be curious.
But it's the same with like a lot
I
of.
don't talk to anybody from university, so I'll never find out. Trauma.
But I wonder if even if you think about like 20 years ago, a lot of feminist groups were just talking about like what they saw as women's rights, whereas now I think there's much more of this kind of idea of things being more interweaved and more kind of you can't just talk about women's rights on its own, like that intersectionality.
It has to be there.
It has to be there, and I think that that's something that we are aware of in like Pangea, is that like we are a queer feminist organization, but that does not just mean that we are focusing on queer feminist issues.
Yeah.
So
I mean, every issue is a queer feminist issue if you think about it, but you know.
yeah, well,
you know what I mean?
That's the thing, is that, but it is. But I think that historically it wasn't seen as that. You know.
Absolutely, yes. And yeah, intersectionality is like super important, and I feel like it is sometimes it is forgotten, and that's why we like have things like white feminism or liberal feminism or this type of things, because like it still prevails that certain groups are being excluded for this or that reason, and usually the reasons the reasons never change over the time. I feel like it's always the same thing. It's like racism or transphobia or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, in Pangea, I feel like we can also do a better job with that. With
I think so, and I think that it's something that can always be developed, and like I think that is the thing of like it's idea of allyship within the queer community. So in terms of things like how can we support other marginalized queer groups in the Czech Republic, so like the queer Roma community or like the queer Vietnamese community, who have very specific forms of marginalization, which is very different to be honest, like the majority of members of Pangea are white in terms of leadership. Generally people who are at universities, so kind of in quite a privileged position themselves. So I think that it's important that we are aware of that as a collective and kind of think about how we can maybe challenge that in itself.
That's absolutely right. A good point for the next management meeting.
Yeah.
Let's reflect.
Yes,
let's reflect a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay. So I believe we have like what, 5 or 10 minutes more?
Yeah, how long do we have left?
How does it look like?
Up to 15 minutes, but so
We have up to 15 minutes.
God, 15
Is there
minutes. Like
Time already. Drink some water.
I will drink some water actually.
So while Helena is drinking water, I'm gonna do a dance. No, I'm kidding. So, Helena, are there any set goals in terms of like education sphere for you personally that you are having at this moment? Something that's you like long term or short term, doesn't really matter. But is there something specific that you would like to achieve, or something that you want to try, or maybe something, maybe if you had some idea that you wanted to put
in terms of Pangea, or just
doesn't have to be in terms of Pangea, but in general, in terms of your activism?
I think that it's continuously reflecting on your own practice and thinking how it can be better for, and recognizing like where you yourself will promote specific voices or kind of, and how you can challenge that within itself. Like I think that I think about it at work, in that I teach literature, and so it's thinking about like in terms of that, like which voices am I promoting? In terms of having a real diversity of different writers and texts. because I think that's something that I can do. But then in itself, I realized that I was thinking quite carefully about that. And then I had like totally missed off thinking about, because we had some training a couple of weeks ago on toxic masculinity. And I was realizing that like by thinking about diversity in a lot of ways, actually I was like really promoting a very specific type of female voice. And I wasn't really thinking about like positive representations of men in works. I just kept on like choosing ones that was like really strong women. And I was like, well, this is great. Like, this is really good to be encouraged.
Yeah.
But actually, like, you have to have a balance of different things.
Fuck men.
So,
Fuck men.
so, but that, I think that came from me, like, thinking that I was being progressive in my thought. But actually, I was using my own kind of background and own privileges to promote a specific type of voice. And then
That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
but it's the same with like Pangea. Like, I actually would love if we had more conversations about like masculinity in it, because I think that like because I think that like this is something that we have. Like, it's great that we have like conversations. There's like so many conversations about like what does it mean to be a woman, and that, or like what does it mean to be queer and things, and that's.
But you said masculinity.
Well, no, I'm saying we have that right now, but I think that there could be something really interesting about doing one about masculinity.
I know, but you just mentioned that we have a lot of like topics, and we talk a lot about what it's like to, what it means, what it's like to be a woman, and about womanhood. But femininity and womanhood, to me at least, are two different things. What about you?
No, I totally agree. Like, they are completely different things.
So that's why I'm a little bit confused. So you say, so that's why, like, you brought up masculinity specifically.
But I wonder if we could do something on, like, not being a man, but like, what is modern day masculinity? Because we talk a lot about modern day femininity. So maybe that could be another like interesting strand, because it's something that is really in the discourse right now. I mean, there's so much about like horrible toxic masculinity online. So that is something that we could combat, but it's the type of thing where it doesn't come naturally obvious to us, because we think like queer feminist NGO, let's talk about like women's sexual health, which is obviously super important to talk about. And we should still continue to talk about that.
Yes.
But it doesn't become as naturally obvious to us to talk about things like that, even though they're still important discussions to have.
I mean, absolutely, like masculinity or manhood or whatever, call it how you want. It does, it has have a huge fucking impact on how things are going right now. So not talking about it maybe is also a mistake. That's an interesting take. Yeah. I love this.
Watch this space. Because
yeah, but also I feel like before you brought up the topic that you mentioned that you unwillingly were perpetuating a certain like narrative, a certain like voice, like you were giving like a spotlight to a certain like type of voice, a certain type of narrative, because of the way you are and who you are, which is in a sense normal, I would say,
it's
because
what we do.
All we can do is like look through the lens of our, you know, of our everything, of our perspective, of our privilege, of our background as being raised in a certain way by certain people in a certain time in a certain space. It all like affects us. But did you find how to say, like a good method on how to try to like dismantle this within yourself? Meaning like, okay, you noticed and pinned down the fact that you were promoting a certain thing, and did you find a way to step away from it, or how to broaden it up on your own, or no?
I think that it's all of us, like in any aspect of our lives, we have to continually work on ourselves and work on recognizing what we do know, recognizing what we don't know, and like not seeing what we don't know as a failure, but thinking, okay, how can I educate myself more on this?
Yeah.
And we all end up having things that we know a lot about and things that we don't know a lot about. It's just knowing when you actually have to take a moment and think, right, this is something I need to know more on. And that's actually a responsibility of mine to know more on it, because I am talking to young people who are really receptive to adults, adults' opinions on things. So actually I have a duty to kind of be as knowledgeable as I can be on different things.
That's beautiful.
I think that, like, as a teacher, you have a unique capacity where you can engage in discussions with students about different things, but you need to kind of do the work yourself.
Yeah.
And inform yourself.
Absolutely.
Even on things that you might disagree with, because then at least you know what you're up against. Like, I watch loads of Andrew Tate videos, not because I like Andrew Tate, but because I knew that a lot of students were watching it in my job, and I was like, I can't just say that he's stupid if I don't know what he's talking about. I need to know.
Fair.
I need to understand it first before then I can go on to.
Yeah, you need to know what you're working with.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that I agree with it,
yeah,
but
of course.
you can have to. Yeah, you have to kind of understand instead of just completely saying, "Oh, it's rubbish," which it is, but you kind of need to know it before you can just say it's rubbish.
Is this just an example you made up, or is it a real?
No, so this is one, was that in my old job, there was I was working with students who were kind of 13, 14, and they became kind of obsessed with Andrew Tate. There was a real, like, rise of it.
That sounds scary.
And it was because we noticed a real increase in like violent outbursts from young men, huge increase in like misogyny towards girls and female teachers and things. And you need to know what you're up against so that you can say to students, let's question this a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's question what we're saying online. Because they have I think this is another thing that with young people is they have a whole life online that we don't know about. And we're not really ever going to know about it.
Listen, I also have a life online that y'all don't know what about anything, you know? Okay, yeah.
This is heavy. Yeah.
It is heavy.
Yeah.
Damn, so being a teacher is not a joke.
No, it's
That's
not.
a very responsible thing to do and a person to be. Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe last question for this episode.
Yeah.
So do you think that this is your calling? Do you feel that you found yourself in teaching? Or do you think that it's just the beginning of a bigger journey for you?
Yes and no. I think that, like, you can't define yourself by your job, really. Like, I think that you have to separate yourself from it. But I think that you also, like, I can see myself always doing stuff in education in different ways. I knew that, like, even when I joined Pangea, I was like, I'm going to join and support the education team because that's what I'm interested in. So it's always going to be a factor of my life. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with my job.
It better be because it's important.
Yeah.
We want more people. We don't want to lose people that we already have. So please keep your passion. Yes. Cherish it.
Yeah.
Take care of it.
Watch this space. I'll have a different job next time.
Yes. Try not to burn out.
Yeah.
Which is complicated not to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
For joining today and for talking.
Yes. And please follow Pangea on Instagram, on TikTok. Please come to some of our events. We hope we've inspired you to
see you Wednesday
See
at the
you.
bazaar. Bye.
Bye.